I was hanging out with a buddy last week, and he was about to spend a good chunk of cash on a rack chassis for his small home lab. He'd been scrolling through endless specs, worrying whether the thing would actually fit his custom build or just end up as an oversized metal box gathering dust. I could hear the hesitation in his voice. What if I pick something that forces me to rewire everything later? He asked me for a quick sanity check before he hit add to cart. So, I pulled up the Supermicro SuperChassis SC846A R900B, looked at the product page, and thought through the real-world scenarios he'd actually face. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the chassis is a 4U, 24-bay rack mount that promises to take an EATX motherboard and two 900-watt power supplies. That alone tells you the target audience is people who need serious expansion. Think multiple storage drives, maybe a couple of GPUs, and a robust power budget. It isn't a hobbyist looking to jam a single motherboard into a tiny case. If you're building a dedicated virtualization host, a media server with lots of disks, or a small-scale private cloud node, this enclosure starts to make sense. Let's walk through a typical setup you might see in a home lab. Imagine you have an Intel Xeon Scalable processor on an EATX board, paired with 8 2.5-inch NVMe drives for fast storage, plus a handful of 3.5-inch HDDs for bulk backups. You also want a couple of low-profile GPUs for transcoding or AI inference. The SC846A R900B gives you space for those drives in its 24-bay front panel, and the 4U height leaves enough room for a full-size motherboard, dual power supplies, and a decent cooling layout. The two 900W PSUs are hot swap ready, which means if one fails you can replace it without powering down the whole rack. A practical safety net you rarely get in cheaper enclosures. One of the hidden trade-offs, however, is the sheer size and weight. A fully stocked chassis can tip the scales at over 100 pounds, and you'll need a sturdy rack or a solid floor mounting solution. If you're planning to move the unit frequently, that becomes a logistical headache. In my own experience with a similar 4U chassis, even just rolling it on a standard rolling cart can strain the wheels. So, if you're a small shop owner who needs to ship equipment often, you might want to look at a lighter 2U alternative, even if it means sacrificing some drive bays. Power distribution is another practical point. The dual 900W supplies provide a combined 1.8 kilowatts headroom, which is generous for most single-node builds, but you have to be mindful of how you allocate that power across components. Supermicro's design uses a common backplane that feeds power to each drive bay, so you don't have to run individual power cables to every HDD or SSD. That tidies up cable management and reduces clutter, which is a real time saver during installation. On the flip side, the backplane is a single point of failure. If it goes bad, you could lose access to every drive. It's not a daily worry, but it's something to keep in mind if you're aiming for maximum uptime. Thermal performance is where the chassis shows its practical strengths. The front panel features a removable filter that traps dust, and there are dedicated intake fans that push cool air across the drives before it hits the motherboard area. In a test run, a server running 24 simultaneous virtual machines stayed under 70 C even under sustained load, thanks largely to that airflow path. For anyone who's ever had to clean dust out of a cramped 2U box, the ease of pulling out the front filter on the SC846A R900B is a welcome feature. However, the rear exhaust relies on the built-in fan array, and you'll need to ensure your rack's rear clearance is sufficient, otherwise, heat can build up behind the chassis. If you're a DIY enthusiast who loves customizing every cable and component, you'll appreciate the internal layout. Supermicro left a decent amount of clearance behind the motherboard, allowing you to route larger power connectors and add optional add-on cards without cramming. The chassis also includes toolless drive trays, so swapping out a failed SSD can be done in a matter of minutes, something that's genuinely useful if you're running a critical service that can't tolerate long downtime. Who should buy this chassis? The sweet spot is a small business or a serious hobbyist who needs a lot of storage, redundant power, and a solid foundation for expansion. It's also a good fit for edge computing nodes where you want to pack enough compute and storage into a single, rack-mountable unit. If you already own an EATX motherboard and have a rack ready to go, the SC846A R900B lets you fill that space efficiently without having to buy a separate power solution. Who should skip it? If you're only looking to house a single motherboard with a few drives, the price and size quickly become overkill. Likewise, if you're on a tight budget or need a portable solution for field work,